If you could travel back in time 4,000 years back, you would step into a world that defied logic, science, and maybe even sanity. A world ruled by god-kings, where the sun was a god, cats were sacred, and the afterlife was more important than life itself. You'd find yourself in the desert empire of colossal pyramids, golden tombs, and scrolls of divine secrets. But you'd also find a civilization so organized, so advanced, it would rival some modern nations. This is not your schoolbook ancient Egypt. This is what you need to know if you ever wake up in Thebes, ride a barge down the Nile, or find yourself standing in the shadow of Ramses the Great. From what to eat, how to act, how not to get cursed, and how to survive in a society built for gods, this is your guide for time travelers. Ancient Egypt. You arrive in ancient Egypt with the sun high in the sky and the Nile glistening like a ribbon of gold through the desert. The air is hot but dry, thick with the scent of dust and baked brick. You are not in Cairo. There is no Egypt air. You're standing in the heart of the greatest civilization of the ancient world. And the locals don't call it Egypt. They call it Kemet, the Black Land, named after the fertile black soil that lines the Nile. Everything around you moves to the rhythm of that river. Time itself flows from its waters. And if you're going to survive here, you'll have to understand it. The first thing you'll notice is the silence, then the chanting, then the movement. Boats made of papyrus stalk silently along the water, carrying fishers, merchants, priests. Their sails flap like ancient lungs exhaling. On land, the streets pulse with labour barefoot men hauling stone, women at the markets bargaining over bundles of onions, boys herding goats with nothing but reeds and yells. Life is raw and visible here. There is no distance between power and poverty. Everything is out in the open. Now before you speak, think carefully. The locals speak a language no longer heard on Earth, ancient Egyptian. It shifts in dialect depending on where and when you land. In the Old Kingdom, the speech is clipped and formal like stone itself. In the New Kingdom, it flows faster, more musical, touched by Nubian and Semitic influences. If you can't speak it, your best bet is to observe. Most people are barefoot. Most are brown-skinned, lean and sun-baked. They wear linen thin, white, stiff, and often soaked in natron to keep it clean. Men wear kilts. Women wear tight-fitting dresses. Both shave their heads in the heat and wear wigs on formal occasions. Slavery exists, but not in the way you've seen in later empires. Most people in chains are prisoners of war, not lifelong property. The average labourer is a free citizen, paid in bread and beer, not currency. In fact, money doesn't exist in this world yet. Everything is traded grain, cloth, livestock, perfume. If you want to survive, learn the value of garlic and sandals. In this time, those two could get you a night's stay or a day's help. But this is not a poor land. Egypt is obscenely wealthy. Its temples overflow with gold and electrum. Its pharaohs with power and ego. If you are anywhere near the royal city Memphis, Thebes, Abydos, you will see it firsthand. Giant pylons rise like cliffs, carved with the stories of gods and war. Obelisks pierce the sky like frozen lightning, and priests walk with slow, deliberate grace through incense-heavy air, wearing leopard skin robes, holding scepters that haven't changed in 1,000 years. You may be wondering, where's the military? Where are the police? Egypt has them, but not in your face. Power is quiet and ever-present. The viziers handle the law. They sit in judgment with scrolls in hand and scribes by their side. Punishment is swift, public and symbolic. Petty theft earns beatings. Bigger crimes, mutilation, and anything that smells of rebellion or disrespect to the gods that earns something worse. Memory erasure. you're not just killed. Your name is wiped from tombs, your face chipped from monuments. To an Egyptian, that's worse than death. It's eternal exile. The Nile itself is the source of everything. Every July it floods regularly, life-giving, divine. Its floodwaters feed the soil. The Egyptians plan their entire calendar around it. In fact, they invented the calendar you use today. 3 seasons. Akhet, the flood. Pere, the planting. Shemu, the harvest. If you're dropped into this world and want to blend in, ask about the river. Praise it. Pray to Hapi, the spirit of the Nile. Say nothing negative about the flood, no matter how inconvenient. To insult the Nile is to curse yourself. And here's a warning. Don't wander into a temple uninvited, even if you think it's abandoned, even if you're desperate. Every inch of temple space is sacred, built for a god, not for you. To enter it without permission is to cross a line no Egyptian would ever dare. Temples are the homes of gods. Priests don't just clean them, they feed the gods, dress them, sing to them, and perform rituals exactly as prescribed. Every mistake risks divine wrath. Every ritual is recorded. The gods are always watching. If you've landed in a time of peace, and there are many, consider yourself lucky. But remember, Egypt is not invincible. It has enemies. Libyans to the west, Nubians to the south, and later, sea peoples from nowhere. The Nile protects Egypt like a mother, but the desert is a barrier and a threat. If you try to leave the fertile strip and wander into the red land, the desert, take water. Lots of it. Take a guide. Without both, you will die, and your body won't be found. Lastly, remember this. To the ancient Egyptians, life is only the beginning. Every moment you live is preparation for what comes after. The gods are watching, judging, weighing your heart against a feather. If it's heavier, you're devoured by a beast. If it's light, you join the eternal field of reeds. In this world, truth is not just a virtue, it's a law of physics. They call it Mat, and if you defy it, time won't save you. So you've arrived. You're in Kemet. Walk softly. Speak little. Watch everything. If you want to survive in ancient Egypt, looking like a time traveler is the fastest way to get yourself either laughed at, enslaved, or sacrificed. Egyptians value order. They value familiarity. And anyone who doesn't look like they belong is going to stick out like a jackal in the court of Ra. So forget your jeans, ditch your sunglasses, and start thinking about linen. The basics are simple. Men wear short kilts called shendit linen wraps that tie at the waist and reach the knees. The more elite the man, the finer and cleaner the linen. Nobles might wear pleated kilts or kilts with decorative aprons attached. Priests, they keep it even cleaner. Their linen is so white it nearly blinds in the sun. If you're lucky enough to be near a palace or a temple and want to pass as someone important, you better keep your outfit spotless. Dirty clothes tell people you work in the fields or the tombs. Or worse, that you're diseased. For women, the dress is a long, tight-fitting sheath held up by shoulder straps. Upper-class women decorate theirs with beads, collars, and gold bangles. And everyone wears perfume, men and women both. The smell of lotus oil, myrrh, or sweet acacia is more than just style. It's hygiene. It's also a protection. Egyptians believe good smells ward off evil. A traveller who doesn't smell right is suspicious. A traveller who stinks is cursed. Headgear is another issue. Most Egyptians shave their heads or keep their hair short to beat the heat. The rich wear wigs made of human hair, carefully styled and heavily scented. If you're going to wear one, do it right. Don't show up with something that looks like it was stitched together from broom bristles. Wigs are status. Cheap ones are a joke. Better to shave your head completely and go bare than wear something that screams fraud. Now let's talk about shoes, or the lack of them. Most Egyptians go barefoot. Sandals are worn mostly by nobles or for travel over rough terrain. If you're walking into a home, a temple, or anyone's private space, take them off. Showing up uninvited is already a risk. Doing it with dusty sandals is a death wish. What about food? You're not going to find anything resembling a supermarket, but you're also not going to starve. Bread is everywhere. Flat, rough, sometimes filled with sand from the grindstones, so don't bite too hard or you'll lose a tooth. Beer is the national drink. It's thick, cloudy and more like liquid bread than the golden pilsners you might know. It's also consumed by everyone, men, women and even children. In fact, beer and bread are how most workers are paid. A labourer who doesn't drink beer is either dead, sick, or not actually a labourer. For meat, it depends on your status. The poor rarely eat it. The rich have access to beef, goose and fish pulled straight from the Nile. Pork is off limits to priests and considered unclean by many. Beans are also taboo in many regions. Garlic and onions, however, are sacred. They are said to increase stamina and ward off disease. If you're headed into hard labour, or even just pretending to, eat plenty. The daily routine in Egypt starts at sunrise. The air is cool and life begins early. Temples wake up. Workers head to fields. Merchants open stalls. The sun determines everything. When it's highest, people rest. When it sets, people go home. Most Egyptians sleep early and rise early. Don't expect parties. Don't expect nightlife. This isn't Rome, this is Egypt. It runs on ritual and rhythm, not chaos and entertainment. In terms of greetings, Egyptians are polite but reserved. Men often bow or place their hand over their heart. Women do the same, but with eyes lowered if speaking to a man of higher status. Don't raise your voice. Don't touch anyone unless they touch you first. And never interrupt a scribe. Scribes are sacred. They can read, they can write, and they record history. Disrespecting a scribe is like spitting on Thoth, god of wisdom. Now, if you're lucky or unlucky enough to be invited to a noble's home, follow the rules. Arrive clean. Speak when spoken to. Accept offerings of bread, beer, or dates without hesitation, but don't eat more than your host. Compliment the house. Compliment the children. If there are musicians or dancers, watch quietly. Egyptians value composure. If you dance wildly or shout during the performance, you'll be seen as mad or foreign or both. And yes, music is everywhere. Harps, flutes, lyres, and hand drums. Most of it is ceremonial, but festivals can get loud, especially those honouring Bastard or Hathor goddesses of pleasure, music, and fertility. These festivals are wild. People drink, dance, and throw caution to the desert wind. If you find yourself in one, enjoy it. But remember, the sun rises quickly, and so do your obligations. There are no sick days in ancient Egypt. One last thing, body language matters. Don't point. Don't sit higher than someone older than you. And if you see someone with tattoos, they're probably a dancer, a priestess, or a prostitute. Tattoos aren't common, but they aren't scandalous either, just specific. To blend in. Don't just mimic what you see. Absorb it. Walk with purpose. Keep your eyes forward. Speak less. Watch more. Ancient Egypt runs on balance between order and chaos, gods and men, sun and shade. Lose that balance and you lose everything. Now you're dressed. You're fed. You're invisible enough to survive. If there's one rule that governs every corner of Egyptian life, it's this. The gods are always watching, not in some abstract symbolic way. Not like modern belief systems where faith lives quietly inside hearts and minds. The gods are present, real and unavoidable. They walk with men, ride in solar barges, and appear in statues so charged with divine energy people bow before them like they might actually move, which, in a way, they might. Everything in Egypt revolves around Ma'at, the cosmic principle of truth, balance, justice, and order. Ma'at isn't just a goddess. She's the glue holding the universe together. If Ma'at is upheld, the sun rises, the Nile floods, crops grow. If Ma'at breaks down, Chaos Isfet returns. Famine, plague, rebellion. The people believe it, the priests enforce it, and the pharaoh embodies it. And that's not hyperbole. The pharaoh isn't just a king. He's a god in human form. The living Horus, the son of Ra. His job isn't just to rule, it's to maintain the balance between the seen and the unseen. Temples aren't churches, they're machines. Each one is a cosmic engine carefully built and operated to feed the gods with offerings, song, incense, and ritual. The deeper you go inside a temple, the more sacred it becomes. Most Egyptians never see the inner sanctum. Only priests go there, and only the clean ones. No bodily hair, no sexual activity, no impure thoughts. Every gesture in the temple is a reenactment of myth, a reminder that the divine story is still unfolding. So, if you're thinking of casually strolling into a shrine with dusty feet and modern arrogance, think again. The gods don't forgive disrespect. In fact, most of the punishments in Egyptian myth aren't about morality, they're about disorders. A thief is a threat because he breaks Ma'at. A lazy worker insults the gods because he disturbs the harmony. Even a misstep in a ritual could be fatal, not because anyone's watching, but because everyone is. You'll see gods everywhere, on walls, on scrolls, in amulets, paintings, and sculpture. Each one with a purpose, a domain, a personality. Ra rules the sun, Osiris governs death and resurrection, Isis is magic and motherhood, Anubis guards the tombs, Thoth tracks knowledge and time, Bastet, Sekhmet, Sobek, names that carry weight like thunder. And then there's Amun, the hidden one, the god so powerful his name merges with Ra in the empire's later years. The gods don't just look odd for the sake of it. Animal heads, wings, and sun discs, they're symbolic. Horus has a falcon's head because he sees everything. Anubis has a jackal's because jackals lurk near cemeteries. These visuals aren't just art, they're instruction manuals. But don't assume Egyptian religion is rigid. It's layered, flexible, and alive. Gods fuse, myths evolve. In Thebes, Amun might be supreme. In Memphis, it's Ptah. Down in Elephantine, they worship Khnum, the ram-headed potter who formed mankind on a wheel. No one corrects anyone, they just absorb. Egypt isn't polytheistic in a scattershot way. It's layered like a prism, one divine light refracted into many forms. You'll encounter rituals constantly: morning purification, noon incense, evening prayers. Priests bathe 4 times a day, shave their heads, and wear fresh linen. Statues of the gods are fed like living beings. Food is placed before them, then consumed by priests after the deity has taken its essence. You'll see processions where gods are carried in boats, hidden behind curtains, while crowds cheer and music echoes through the streets. These aren't performances. These are divine appearances. The gods don't just exist. They travel. If you end up in a death ceremony, tread carefully. The dead must be buried with precision or their soul is doomed. The opening of the mouth ceremony, where the corpse's senses are restored for the afterlife, is not just symbolic, it's essential. A mispronounced word or an incorrect gesture could mean the soul never reaches Osiris. And once in the afterlife, the journey isn't over. The heart is weighed against the feather of Ma'at. If it's lighter, the soul joins the eternal fields. If heavier, it's eaten by Amit, the devourer, a monster with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the rear of a hippo. Total annihilation. Religion here isn't something people argue about. It's the air they breathe. You won't find debates, converts, or missionaries. You'll find statues wrapped in cloth, offerings left at roadside shrines, farmers bowing to the Nile, and scribes invoking Thoth before writing a single line. Even dreams are divine messages. The sick sleep in temple complexes, hoping to be visited by healing gods like Imhotep or Serket. The gods aren't silent. They speak in signs, in dreams, in disasters. Interpreting them is a profession. Magic, too, is part of the spiritual toolkit. Not fantasy magic. Real magic heck the divine force used by gods and humans alike. Spells are written on papyrus, carved into amulets, chanted over food, inked on skin. Women carry fertility charms. Soldiers wear protective scarabs. Even pharaohs rely on court magicians to ward off snakes, disease, and bad omens. If you're clever, you'll do the same. In Egypt, faith isn't blind. It's practical. You don't believe in the gods to feel better. You believe because it works. The flood comes. The crops grow. The dead are buried and do not return. The stars appear exactly where they should. And as long as that continues, the gods are pleased. So if you want to survive in this land, learn the names, light the incense, speak the prayers, align yourself with Mot. Because in Egypt, even silence is sacred, and even shadows have ears. In ancient Egypt, death isn't the end of the story. It's barely even the middle. Here, death is just the beginning of a much longer, more dangerous journey. A journey through darkness, fire, monsters, judgment, and if you're lucky, into the eternal fields of paradise. If you're not lucky, your soul is eaten, your name is erased, and your afterlife ends before it begins. That's why the Egyptians prepare for death from the moment they're born. Because the afterlife isn't a dream. It's real, it's detailed, and it's got rules. Let's start with the body. Egyptians believe you can't exist in the next world without a body. Not just a memory of it. A physical, preserved version. So they invented one of the most famous and complicated processes in human history, mummification. And no, it's not just wrap him in bandages and bury him with treasure. It's a sacred, multi-stage ritual that takes over 2 months to complete and involves priests, embalmers, tools, prayers, and organs in jars. First, the body is washed with water from the Nile and purified with palm wine. Then the embalmers get to work. The brain is removed through the nose using hooked tools because it's considered useless in the afterlife. The heart, on the other hand, is crucial. It's the seat of memory, thought, and morality. Sometimes it's left inside. Sometimes it's removed and preserved, depending on the era and budget. Other organs, the liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines, are dried out and placed into canopic jars, each protected by one of the 4 sons of Horus. These jars aren't just decorative, they're guardians. The dead need their organs safe if they want to function in the afterlife. The body is then packed in natron, a natural salt, to dry it out completely. This takes weeks. When it's done, the skin is leathery, the body shriveled. But that's the point. Decay is the enemy. Preservation is victory. After that, the embalmers stuff the body with cloth, resins, or sawdust to restore shape. The skin might be painted with oils, the nails dyed with henna, the face masked with gold or plaster. And then comes the wrapping, layer upon layer of linen, sometimes inscribed with spells, tied with sacred knots, sealed with amulets, scarabs, ankhs, and eyes of Horus to protect the soul on its journey. Now comes the tomb, and this is where things get serious. If you're poor, your tomb might be a pit in the sand, a few items, maybe a jar of beer. If you're middle class, you might afford a rock-cut shaft with some painted walls and pottery. But if you're really elite, then welcome to the world of mastabas, pyramids, and underground palaces carved into cliffs. Tombs are not just graves. They are houses for eternity. The car, the vital essence of a person, needs a place to live after death. It needs food, drink, and offerings. That's why tombs have false doors, offering tables, and daily rituals long after the body is buried. Families hire priests to perform these rites. If they stop, the soul grows hungry, restless, forgotten. Inside a tomb, you'll find lots of artwork. But don't think it's decoration. Every painting, every inscription is functional. Scenes of farming, fishing, dancing, and feasting aren't just pretty pictures. They're blueprints. In the afterlife, the dead can enter these scenes and live them. A wall showing servants baking bread. That means bread forever. A wall showing scribes taking orders. That means status, order, power. And then there are the texts. Spells from the pyramid texts, coffin texts, and the Book of the Dead are everywhere. These aren't for reading pleasure. These are survival manuals, directions through the underworld, instructions on what to say when confronted by gatekeepers, serpents, lakes of fire, and divine judges. One wrong answer, one forgotten spell, and your soul gets stuck forever. The journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, isn't easy. It's a terrifying symbolic gauntlet. There are demons, gods, tests, trials. The soul rides with Ra on his solar bark, fending off the serpent Apophis, navigating darkness with the help of sacred spells and protective charms. The dead must convince gods they are pure, that they've lived justly, that they haven't murdered, stolen, blasphemed, or made another weep. The final test is the most famous, the weighing of the heart. In the Hall of Two Truths, the dead stand before Osiris, flanked by Ma'at and the 42 judges of truth. The heart is placed on a scale. On the other side, the feather of Ma'at. If the heart is heavy with sin, it outweighs the feather. The soul is tossed to Amit, the devourer. Game over. But if the heart is light, the soul passes. It is justified. It becomes an Ak, a radiant spirit, and enters the field of reeds, a perfect version of Egypt, with eternal sunlight, clear waters, and all your family waiting. It's not heaven. It's better. It's home. Forever. Death in ancient Egypt isn't feared. It's managed. It's prepared for. People spend their whole lives saving for a better afterlife, not retirement. That's why tomb robbing is such a scandal. It's not just theft. It's a cosmic violation. If you disturb a tomb, you're not just stealing gold. You're stealing eternity. And the curses? Some are real, inscribed on walls, warning of divine wrath, plagues, or madness for trespassers. Whether they worked or not, people believed them. And that belief had power. So if you stumble into a tomb, step carefully. Don't touch the offerings. Don't read the names aloud. And whatever you do, don't move the body. The dead here aren't dead. They're waiting. In the land of pyramids and papyrus, politics doesn't look like debates or elections. It looks like a monument. Colossal statues, obelisks covered in hieroglyphs, temples that stretch a mile. That's how you recognize power in ancient Egypt, not by what a ruler says, but by what they build, how many people they can command, and how far their name travels on stone. Because here, power is eternal, and the man who holds it is more than a man. He's the Pharaoh. The word Pharaoh means great house, but that's just the title. The reality is stranger. A pharaoh is the high priest of every temple, the commander of every army, and the living embodiment of Horus, the falcon god of kingship. He is divine by birthright, not elected, not questioned. His authority comes from the gods, and denying that authority is heresy. Pharaohs don't just rule the people, they maintain the order of the cosmos. Their every decree reinforces Ma'at, the sacred balance that holds the world together. This is not a dictatorship in the modern sense. It's more like a living myth. The people believe that as long as the pharaoh is strong, Egypt is strong. If he's weak, the Nile dries, the crops fail, chaos seeps in. That belief is why you'll never hear an Egyptian openly criticize the king. Even if they suspect corruption or failure, they won't say it aloud. It's not just dangerous, it's sacrilegious. That said, being pharaoh isn't easy. You're always being watched. Always expected to perform rituals, lead campaigns, build monuments, honor the gods, and project strength across two lands, Upper and Lower Egypt. You can't have a bad day, you can't show doubt. The crown is a performance, and the stage is the entire kingdom. Palaces are not like European castles. They're sprawling, sunlit compounds made of mud brick and painted in bright colours, blues, reds, yellows. The air smells of myrrh, lotus oil, fresh baked bread. Courtiers bustle through open halls. Guards in leopard skin sashes patrol the gates. Scribes sit cross-legged in shady corners recording decrees and letters. The walls are covered in images of the pharaoh smiting enemies, receiving tribute or making offerings to gods. Every inch of space reinforces the king's role. Divine, strong, eternal. Inside the palace there's a strict hierarchy. At the top is the pharaoh. Just below him is the vizier, the second most powerful person in Egypt. Think of him as the CEO of the kingdom. He oversees law, taxation, construction, agriculture and security. Every decision flows through him. He wears white robes and speaks softly but with absolute authority. If you meet him, don't speak first. Bow, wait, and whatever you do, don't lie. The vizier represents Ma'at, and he is trained to spot deceit like a falcon spots a mouse. Then there are the scribes, the real engine of the Egyptian government. They can read, write, calculate and communicate across time and space. A letter written in Memphis might reach Thebes weeks later, but it will be delivered, read and answered with perfect precision. If you think paperwork is boring, try running an empire without it. Grain quotas, border patrols, building plans, river levels, tax records. It's all documented. Egypt runs on ink and reeds as much as it does on stone and labour. The army when mobilised is swift and brutal. Chariots, archers, spearmen, led by generals appointed by the pharaoh himself. In times of peace, many soldiers serve as guards, labourers or temple attendants. But when war calls against Nubians, Libyans, Hittites, they march fast and fight hard. Pharaohs often lead from the front, wearing the blue war crown, driving chariots into battle, flanked by standard bearers and bodyguards. Victory is never just a win, it's a divine act. Enemies aren't just defeated. They're erased from stone, reduced to rows of bound captives under the king's feet. Foreign policy too is handled with performance. Pharaohs marry foreign princesses, send gifts of gold and linen, and demand tribute from vassal states. You'll see scenes carved into walls of Asiatics, Nubians, Libyans, all bringing goods before the throne, bowing low, presenting leopards, incense, and exotic treasures. These aren't casual visits, they're ceremonies of submission. But not all pharaohs rule equally. Some expand Egypt's borders and fill its temples with wealth like Thutmose III, who campaigned across the Levant, or Ramses II, who built so many statues of himself you'd think the gods had retired. Others focus inward like Amenhotep III, who turned Egypt into a festival of luxury and culture. Then there's Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh who tried to change everything, abolished the old gods, declared Aten the one true deity, and moved the capital to a new city. After his death, the priests erased his name, his monuments, and his memory. That's the risk of power here. You can be immortal, or you can be forgotten. And yes, women can rule too. Hatshepsut did his best ruling for over 2 decades, dressing like a king, building temples, launching trade missions, and commissioning some of the most iconic architecture in Egypt. Her stepson tried to erase her from history, but her legacy lives in stone. Egypt doesn't care about gender. It cares about strength, order, and devotion to the gods. So if you find yourself near the court, watch your mouth, watch your posture, and never call the pharaoh by name. Use titles: His Majesty, Lord of the Two Lands, Son of Ra. Even in private, the king is never just a man. He is the bridge between earth and sky, time and eternity, and in Egypt, that bridge is sacred. Not everyone in ancient Egypt builds pyramids or wears gold. Most people don't live in palaces, talk to pharaohs, or get buried with a library of spells. The real Egypt, the one that breathes, sweats and feeds itself, is made up of workers. Farmers, potters, brewers, brickmakers, fishermen and scribes. They are the engine behind the empire, and without them, the temples fall silent, the tombs go unfinished, and the gods go hungry. If you were born here, chances are you'd live in a village near the Nile. Maybe a cluster of mud brick homes with flat roofs, small courtyards and shared ovens. Walls are thick to keep out heat. Roofs are used for sleeping during the hotter months. Life is crowded, noisy and public. Privacy isn't really a thing. Families sleep in one room. Kids run everywhere. Animals wander freely. Goats, chickens, sometimes even cattle. There's no such thing as zoning laws. You live where the land is fertile and the water is close. The average Egyptian rises at dawn. There are no clocks, but the sun is the ruler of time. Farmers head to the fields, fishermen to the river, potters to their wheels. Women handle food, laundry, weaving and childcare. Children help out early. There's no long adolescence. You're either learning a trade or already working by your early teens. Education exists, but it's for the few, usually boys destined to become scribes or priests. Most kids learn through doing, not reading. Farming is the backbone of Egypt. The Nile floods every year, leaving behind rich black silt perfect for growing grain. Wheat and barley are the main crops turned into bread and beer. Dates, figs, onions, garlic, lettuce and leeks also grow in abundance. Farmers use wooden ploughs pulled by oxen, and water is lifted from canals with a simple device called a shaduf, a long pole with a counterweight. The tools are primitive, but the system works. Egypt feeds itself well most years, but when the flood fails, famine follows. Taxes are paid on goods, not coins. The government keeps detailed records of how much grain you owe, how many fish you've caught, how much linen your household produced. Everything is written down by scribes, who hold immense power for people who never swing a sword. A scribe can make or break your year with a stroke of a reed pen. Disputes are settled in local courts. Most are about land, water rights or inheritance. The system is slow but orderly. Do you want justice? Bring witnesses. Bring patience. Labour is seasonal. During the inundation, when the Nile floods and farming stops, many workers are drafted into state projects. You might help build a temple, carve a tomb, or dig a canal. Contrary to popular myth, pyramid workers are not slaves. They're skilled labourers, organised into teams, housed in dormitories, fed well, even treated by doctors. They work hard, die young, and are honoured in death. Many of their names are known, still etched into the stones they moved. Artisans live a slightly better life. Painters, sculptors, carpenters, and metalworkers are often employed by the state or wealthy patrons. Some live in special villages like Deir el-Medina, where workers who built royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings had homes, food rations, and time off. Their walls are covered in graffiti jokes, poetry, even love notes. These people are literate, proud of their craft, and occasionally rebellious. There are records of strikes, real ones. "We have no food," they wrote. "We are dying of hunger." And the government, surprisingly, listened. Traders and merchants are the wild cards of society. Some deal in grain or livestock. Others trade in perfume, oils, papyrus, or semi-precious stones. Trade extends beyond Egypt down into Nubia, up into the Levant, across the Mediterranean. A smart merchant can become wealthy. Not noble, but rich enough to build a tomb and hire a priest to keep their name alive. Wealth doesn't guarantee status, but it helps. Gold talks, even here. And then there's the domestic sphere, where women run the show. Egyptian women have more legal rights than most in the ancient world. They can own property, divorce, inherit land, and manage businesses. Many are literate. Some are priestesses, doctors, or musicians in temple service. Most, though, are homemakers. But don't let the title fool you. Running a home here is hard labour. Grinding grain, baking bread, fetching water, making clothes, raising children. It's a full-time job with no off switch. Family is everything. Lineage matters. Parents are honoured. Ancestors are remembered with offerings and prayers. Names are powerful, and the dead are kept close, sometimes literally, buried in courtyards or beneath floors. Festivals bring communities together. The Wepet Rempet, the New Year, is marked with feasting and rituals. So are the beautiful Feast of the Valley and the Feast of Opet, when gods are carried from temple to temple in golden boats, and the people dance in the streets. Entertainment is simple but present. Board games like Senet, storytelling, music, and festivals. Beer flows freely, songs are sung, children play with clay dolls, balls, and carved animals. Even in poverty, joy finds a way. The poor in Egypt do not romanticize their suffering, but they also don't expect luxury. What they want is stability, good floods, honest scribes, and favor from the gods. And above all, they want to be remembered. Because in Egypt, memory is life. To speak the name of the dead is to keep them alive. To be forgotten is the real death. So when you walk through a village or a work site, don't look down. These people aren't just background extras in history. They are Egypt. The stone doesn't rise, the temples don't shine, and the pharaohs don't live forever without them. To the Egyptians, their land is the center of the world. The Nile is life. The deserts are protected. The gods live here, not elsewhere. Everything outside Egypt's borders is Tar-Mehu, the unknown land, the chaotic land. Foreigners are either enemies to be defeated or curiosities to be absorbed, but either way, they are not trusted. Egypt is a closed system. It doesn't need the world. The world needs Egypt. That doesn't mean they're isolated. Far from it. Egypt fights, trades allies, and absorbs, but it does so on its own terms. Everything foreign is measured against Egyptian order. If it fits, it's tolerated. If not, it's pushed back into the desert or the sea. And that tension between openness and suspicion defines how Egypt deals with everyone from Libyans to Levantines to Hittites to Greeks. Let's start with the neighbours. To the south, Nubia. Rich in gold, cattle, ebony, and archers, the Egyptians respect the Nubians but don't treat them as equals. They invade Nubia often, build forts, take hostages, demand tribute, but over time they also marry into Nubian elites, borrow styles, and even adopt Nubian soldiers into their armies. Later, in a twist of irony, Nubians will conquer Egypt and rule as pharaohs. But in most periods, Nubia is the prized borderland, half ally, half colony. To the west, the Libyans, desert people, tribal, nomadic, difficult to control. They raid occasionally and Egypt responds with quick military strikes. The Libyans aren't a major threat, but they're persistent. Over time, they too are absorbed, some settling in the delta, others serving as mercenaries or labourers. Egyptian culture is strong. Even its enemies end up wearing linen and bowing to Ra. The real threats come from the north and east. That's where the empires live. The Hittites, the Mitanni, the Babylonians. These are not nomads. These are kings with armies, chariots, and ambitions. Egypt's wars with them are long, brutal, and complex. Sometimes it's about borders, sometimes about trade routes, sometimes about pride. One of the most famous battles in ancient history, Kadesh, happens in this context. Ramses II, still young and hungry, marches north with a massive army to confront the Hittites. He expects a quick win. Instead, he walks into a trap. The battle is chaotic. Ramses is nearly killed, but he fights back, rallies his troops, and escapes what should have been disaster. The Egyptians call it a victory. So do the Hittites. But what matters is what comes next. Peace. After years of tension, Egypt and the Hittites sign the first known international peace treaty in history. It's not just symbolic, it's political genius. The two superpowers agree to borders, to non-aggression, even to military assistance. Later, Ramses married a Hittite princess to seal the deal. Foreign policy here isn't just about war, it's about narrative. Both sides get to claim victory. Both sides avoid ruin. And Egypt, as always, gets to say the gods are still with us. But not all foreigners are enemies. Some are immigrants, traders, mercenaries, artisans. Egypt attracts talent. If you're skilled, you'll be tolerated, maybe even respected. Foreigners live in enclaves, especially near ports and border towns. They speak their languages, keep their gods, sometimes intermarry, but they are watched, monitored, because in Egypt, chaos often comes from outside. The biggest rupture in this worldview comes with the Hyksos. They're Asiatic rulers who somehow seize control of Lower Egypt around 1650 BCE. They don't burn cities, they don't destroy temples, but they do take the throne. They rule from Avaris in the Delta. For a century, Egyptians never forget it. To them, this is a great shame. The moment when foreign kings wore the double crown. When the order of the universe broke. Eventually, native pharaohs rise from Thebes, rally the south and drive the Hyksos out. But the scar remains. Every future invasion, real or rumoured, is measured against that wound. Egypt learns from the Hyksos. They adopt chariots, composite bows, new fortification strategies. Being invaded makes them smarter, tougher, more suspicious. They build stronger borders, station more troops, monitor the movement of goods and people. Egypt becomes both more defensive and more imperial. Diplomacy becomes a fine-tuned craft. Letters are sent between pharaohs and foreign kings, written in Akkadian, the diplomatic language of the time. Gifts are exchanged. Gold, ivory, lapis lazuli. Everything comes with ceremony. Egypt always sends more than it receives. Not because it's generous, because it must appear wealthier, more powerful. Egypt never begs, it bestows. Foreign wives are another tool of diplomacy. Pharaohs accept foreign princesses but rarely send their own daughters abroad. That would imply equality. And Egypt doesn't do equality. Even when being practical, the pharaoh must be seen as divine, superior, eternal. It's not just politics, it's performance. Foreigners also bring religion, ideas, gods with strange names and animal forms. Some are absorbed, some are rejected. Egypt doesn't fear foreign belief systems, it filters them. If a god fits the pattern, they're added to the pantheon. If not, they vanish. Egypt's gods aren't jealous. They're territorial, and the priests know how to guard their turf. By the time the Greeks arrive first as mercenaries, later as conquerors, Egypt is ready. They've seen it all. They know how to handle outsiders. With grandeur, with mystery, with silence. Because in the end, Egypt's power isn't just military or economic, it's psychological. It convinces everyone, even invaders, that Egypt is too old, too sacred, too eternal to be fully conquered. So, if you're a foreigner in this world, walk carefully, learn the customs, bow when expected, stay alert, because Egypt might welcome you with open arms or crush you with sandals of gold. In Egypt, stone is memory. Every monument, every column, every temple wall is a sentence in the longest story humanity has ever told. The Egyptians didn't just build for shelter. They were built for eternity. And they did it without cranes, without steel, without modern machines, just copper tools, wooden sleds, ropes, sweat, planning, and a stubborn refusal to be forgotten. The result? A civilization that speaks louder 4,000 years later than most nations do now. Let's start with the most famous symbols of Egyptian engineering, the pyramids. Massive, geometric, impossible-looking mountains of limestone and granite. But the real marvel isn't just their size, it's their precision. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built with over 2 million blocks, each weighing between 2 and 70 tons, and somehow aligned with cardinal points so accurately that even satellites today find it difficult to explain. No computers, no lasers, just stargazers, rope stretchers, and sheer human coordination. These pyramids weren't random projects, they were resurrection engines, designed to help the pharaoh ascend to the heavens and live among the gods. Inside, passageways twist and narrow. Chambers echo with ancient silence. The air is dry, the walls bare or inscribed. These aren't places for the living, they're launch pads for eternity. But the pyramid building didn't last forever. After the Old Kingdom, tombs moved underground. By the time of the New Kingdom, the Valley of the Kings became the favoured resting place for royals. Still massive, still lavish, but hidden now. Buried in rock instead of standing in the sun, because tomb robbing had become an epidemic. Even in death, pharaohs couldn't escape thieves. And then there are the temples, Karnak, Luxor, Abydos, Edfu, each one a city within a city, built not just for worship but for performance, politics and permanence. Columns rise like petrified forests carved with scenes of offerings. Battles, hymns, roofs are painted with stars. Floors echo with footsteps of barefoot priests. These temples weren't meant for mass congregations. They were sacred zones. The further you moved inside, the more restricted the access. The gods lived in the center, in dark sanctuaries, visited only by high priests or the pharaoh himself. Builders of these places were not slaves. They were trained specialists, organized in teams, paid in rations, assigned specific tasks. Quarry workers cut the stone upstream. Transport teams floated blocks down the Nile on barges. Architects and foremen directed every move. Artisans carved, painted, polished. Every chisel mark mattered. Every alignment had meaning. The sun rises between pylons during solstices. Shadows fall on altars. Temples are not just structures. They're instruments of light and ritual. Engineering wasn't their only genius. The Egyptians also mastered water management. They built canals, basins and wells. They tracked the flood cycles with nilometers. Stone staircases marked to record the river's height. Too low and there's famine. Too high and there's destruction. Predicting the flood became a national obsession. It determined taxes, planning, and harvest. Over time, it evolved into the world's first calendar 365 days. 12 months, 3 seasons, tied not to moons, but to the rising of Sirius and the Nile's rhythm. Writing, too, was an Egyptian triumph. Hieroglyphs weren't just pictures. They were a complex, flexible writing system used for religion, poetry, administration, and art. Over time, they developed hieratic cursive shorthand, used by scribes, and later demotic, a simplified script for everyday use. Papyrus made from reeds became the ancient world's notebook, lightweight, durable, portable. With it, Egyptians recorded everything: myths, medical texts, treaties, love poems, complaints, prayers. Nothing was too small or too grand to write down. They also had a rich understanding of math and medicine. Geometry helped measure fields, construct walls, and align pyramids. Medical texts show treatments for wounds, stomach issues, infertility. They knew how to stitch, splint, and diagnose based on symptoms. They believed in spiritual causes for illness, curses, angry gods, but also practiced real treatments: honey as an antiseptic, bread mold for infections, castor oil for digestion. They measured time with sundials and water clocks. They brewed beer with yeast. They invented lock systems and door bolts. They even had dental work, crude but real. Their inventions weren't just technical, they were conceptual. The very idea of preserving identity beyond death, of recording truth in stone, of aligning architecture with the cosmos, these were philosophical revolutions. Most ancient cultures were built for kings. The Egyptians built for gods, and for memory. That's why their monuments outlast invasions, floods, earthquakes, and centuries of sand. Even after empires rose and fell, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Egypt's architectural soul remained. New rulers built in the old style. Foreign kings commissioned temples to Egyptian gods. The style never broke, because it wasn't just national, it was cosmic, a reflection of the divine order set in stone. Today, tourists wander through Karnak with water bottles and cameras. They snap selfies with the Sphinx. They walk through tombs built for immortality like they're just old rooms. But if you pay attention, if you stand still, you can feel it. The weight, the silence, the ambition. These weren't just structures. They were conversations with the gods, with time, with us. So if you time travel here, don't just look, don't just photograph. Feel the stone, read the walls. Remember that every block you touch was placed by hands 100 generations deep. Egypt didn't build for today, it was built for always. Behind the temples and monuments, behind the priests and politics, Egypt had bedrooms. It had lovers. It had marriages, heartbreak, gossip, flirting, jealousy, longing, and lust. This was a civilization of gods and glory, yes, but also of very real people with very human feelings. They didn't just pray. They wrote love poems. They didn't just fight wars. They courted, married, and made families. They fell in love, got tired of each other, and sometimes divorced. This wasn't some prudish culture of silence. It was a society that talked about sex, celebrated fertility, and understood romance not as weakness, but as life itself. In Egyptian belief, love wasn't separate from the divine. The gods fell in love too. Isis and Osiris, Hathor and Horus. These weren't just cosmic figures, they were emotional beings. Hathor, in particular, was the goddess of love, beauty, music, and joy. Her festivals were full of dancing, wine, and laughter. Women prayed to her for romance, for happy marriages, for the spark that turns routine into magic. Marriage in Egypt wasn't a religious ceremony. There were no temples involved, no vows before the gods. It was a practical agreement between families, sealed with a contract and gifts, especially from the groom to the bride's family. But don't mistake that for coldness. Love existed, and we know that because they wrote about it. In letters, on papyrus, carved into walls, spoken in songs. Some love poems survive that are so direct, so vulnerable, they could have been written last week. "I belong to you like a field planted with grain," one lover writes. "I want to be your wife, your servant, the water at your feet." These aren't metaphors from a cold culture. These are words from a person who understood desire, who saw love not as weakness, but as a vital force like the Nile itself, surging, flooding, receding, returning. Sex too was not taboo. It wasn't hidden or shamed. It was part of life, nature, the divine order. Fertility mattered, children were a blessing, and sex was a tool of magic, healing, and even resurrection. In myth, Isis restores Osiris not just by spell, but by reuniting with him physically. That act brings him back to life. Passion, in Egypt, had power. But it wasn't a free-for-all. There were rules. Adultery was taken seriously, not as sin, but as disruption, a threat to social balance, property rights, and family honor. In some periods, the punishment could be severe divorce, beatings, even mutilation. Women were expected to be faithful, especially in the upper classes where inheritance and legitimacy mattered. Men had more leeway, but even they were judged if their affairs caused scandal. Still, passion wasn't policed the way it was in some later empires. Women had status. They could initiate divorce. They could own property, keep their dowry, and remarry. Love wasn't locked in a cage of religion or shame. It was something to be enjoyed responsibly, but not fearfully. Beauty standards existed, of course. Both men and women wore makeup kohl for the eyes, malachite for colour, red ochre for lips and cheeks. Not just for vanity. Eye makeup was believed to protect against evil and sun glare. Perfume was everywhere. Lotus oil, myrrh, frankincense. Scent mattered. A clean, sweet-smelling body was not just attractive, it was essential. Wigs were fashionable. Shaved heads were common for hygiene, but wigs allowed for versatility. Some were simple. Others were elaborate braided, beaded, perfumed. Clothing was minimal, thanks to the heat. Linen wraps, sheer tunics, pleated kilts. The wealthier you were, the more layers you could afford. Jewelry wasn't just decoration, it was protection. Amulets against harm. Symbols of love. Tokens exchanged between lovers. Even in tombs, love appeared. Husbands and wives are shown together, touching, embracing. Not just posed. Intimate. Humans. One scene in a tomb shows a couple sitting side by side, the wife touching her husband's shoulder, smiling. Another shows a man offering flowers to his wife in the afterlife. These aren't formal displays. They're memories. Proof that love in Egypt didn't die with the body. Same-sex relationships. The evidence is murky, but not entirely absent. Some scholars point to the joint tomb of Nyankhnum and Khnumhotep, two male officials buried together in close embrace, their faces touching, surrounded by scenes that mirror heterosexual couples. Were they lovers, brothers, colleagues? Egypt doesn't tell us clearly, but the possibility is there, and the lack of condemnation says something too. Children were central, not just for legacy, but for joy. Families were large when possible. Infertility was a source of anxiety, and there were prayers, potions, and spells to fix it. The god Bes protected childbirth. Taweret, the hippo goddess, guarded mothers. Birth was dangerous. Many women didn't survive. But when it worked, it was celebrated. And children, once born, were cherished. Not everything was romantic. Some marriages were arranged purely for economics or politics. Women could be married off young. Class differences shaped everything. A noble woman marrying a farmer? Unlikely. But the idea of love between people of equal rank is real, messy, emotional love that was not just accepted, it was immortalized. So if you find yourself in ancient Egypt, don't think of it as cold or sterile. Think of a couple laughing in a courtyard at dusk, a teenager passing a carved love note to their crush, a husband returning from the fields with figs for his wife, a mother whispering blessings into her baby's ear. This was a society of emotion, of connection, of deep, joyful, complicated love. No empire lasts forever, not even one blessed by the gods, guarded by deserts, and held together by the Nile. For 2,000 years, Egypt stood unmatched in culture, architecture, and divine authority. But even the greatest monuments cast shadows. And eventually, cracks begin to show. The signs weren't dramatic at first. No apocalypse, no collapse overnight. Just slow erosion of power, of clarity, of the belief that Egypt was the eternal center of the world. It began with pressure. Pressure from outside, pressure from within. In the later New Kingdom, pharaohs like Ramses II still projected strength statues 10 stories tall, inscriptions of battlefield dominance, but much of it was shown. Behind the scenes, the treasury was bleeding. The priests of Amun had grown too rich, and the balance between temple and throne shifted. In some cities, the high priest held more power than the king. Egypt's great unifier, the pharaoh, was being overshadowed by his own gods. At the same time, the world around Egypt was changing fast. The Hittite Empire collapsed, the Mycenaeans fell, the so-called Sea Peoples, mysterious raiders from unknown lands, swept across the eastern Mediterranean, burning cities, toppling kingdoms. Egypt barely survived. Ramses III fought them off, but it was costly. The economy suffered. Grain prices rose. Tomb workers went on strike. Even the royal burial grounds were looted by insiders, not enemies. When your own guards are stealing from the dead, something's broken. Then came the Libyans, settling in the western delta. At first they served as soldiers, then leaders, then rulers. By the 22nd dynasty, Egypt was led by Libyan-descended pharaohs. They wore the crown, spoke the language, built temples, but they weren't born of Ra. The divine thread frayed. Legitimacy became negotiable. The Nubians rose next, powerful kings from the south, descendants of the very people Egypt once ruled. They didn't invade as barbarians, they came as believers. They loved Egypt's culture, adopted its gods, built pyramids of their own, and restored temples. But still, to many Egyptians, they were outsiders. The Site kings followed Egyptians again, trying to restore old glories, rebuilding statues, and recarving names. A renaissance, but a fragile one. And then, the Persians arrived. Efficient, ruthless, powerful. They conquered Egypt with little resistance. Cambyses II, son of Cyrus the Great, took Memphis. Egypt became a satrapy province of a foreign empire. Temples still functioned. Priests still prayed, but the throne was no longer sacred. It was just another seat of power, transferable by force. The Egyptians never stopped resisting. There were rebellions, uprisings, brief returns to independence, but each one was shorter than the last. The fire never quite caught again. The divine system pharaoh, priesthood, temple, cosmos wasn't made to survive foreign kings. The Persians saw Egypt as a resource. The Egyptians saw them as a wound. Then Alexander the Great marched in. He wasn't Persian, he wasn't native, but he was brilliant and clever. He presented himself as a liberator, honoured the gods, visited the oracle of Amun, wore Egyptian dress, claimed divine status. The Egyptians, weary of chaos, embraced him. After his death, his general Ptolemy stayed behind, founded a dynasty, built a new capital, Alexandria, and for the first time, Egypt became something new, Greek on the outside, Egyptian at its heart. The Ptolemies ruled for nearly 300 years. They spoke Greek, but worshipped Egyptian gods. They built temples in the old style. They funded priests. Cleopatra VII, last of the line, even learned Egyptian, the first Ptolemaic ruler to do so in centuries. She was brilliant, political, and strategic, but the storm around her was too big. Rome was rising. Julius Caesar came, then Mark Antony, then Octavian. Egypt was drawn into the orbit of a new empire, one colder, harder, hungrier than anything before. In 30 BCE, after Cleopatra's suicide and Antony's defeat, Egypt became a Roman province. The divine kingship was over. Forever. There would be governors now, not pharaohs. Emperors in Rome would wear the titles of Horus and son of Ra, but it was an empty theatre. The gods of Egypt, still worshipped, still carved, still painted, began to fade. Temples continued into the Roman era. Priests still lit incense. Farmers still offered grain. But the pulse was slowing. Christianity crept in. Then Islam. The language changed. The scripts were forgotten. The stories of Osiris and Isis became myths, then legends, then silence. For centuries, Egypt's temples were buried by sand. Its gods erased. Its names are mispronounced. The pyramids became puzzles. The Sphinx, a riddle with no answer. Travelers stared at the ruins and guessed. For most of history, ancient Egypt was a ghost. And then, after 2,000 years of silence, the Rosetta Stone was found. The code was broken. The voices returned. Hieroglyphs could be read. The names spoke again. Thutmose, Nefertari, Hatshepsut, Ramses. Today, Egypt lives in museums, textbooks, documentaries, and the dreams of every kid who sees a pyramid and feels something ancient in their chest. Its legacy isn't just in stone. It's in our fascination with time, death, and what lasts. It reminds us that greatness isn't just built, it's remembered. So if you travel to ancient Egypt truly, know this: you are stepping into a world that did everything it could to be eternal. Not perfect, not fair, but eternal. And in some way, they got what they wanted. So now you've arrived. You've walked the streets of Thebes, tasted the bread, bowed to the gods, whispered the names of the dead, and stood still as the sun rose over a pyramid older than anything in your world. But there's one last thing to understand about ancient Egypt. It's not just a time or a place, it's a system. And systems like this don't bend easily. You don't come here to change it, you come here to not get broken by it. Here's what you need to remember. First, never act like you know better. You don't. You might know how things turned out in the long run, who gets conquered, who gets remembered. But to the people here, the gods are real, the Pharaoh is divine, and the order of the world is not up for debate. The Nile floods because Ma'at is upheld. The sun rises because Ra fights chaos every night. Speak against that, and you're not clever, you're dangerous. Second, learn your role. Every Egyptian knows theirs. Scribes write, farmers farm, priests serve. Even the gods have roles as protector, creator, destroyer, judge. Chaos comes when people step outside of what the world expects of them. So if you want to survive, don't try to stand out. Blend in. Watch. Listen. Follow. Respect isn't just cultural here, it's structural. Third, respect the dead. This cannot be overstated. The dead aren't gone, they're present. Their names are spoken, their offerings are maintained. Their tombs are sacred ground. Don't joke, point, or walk carelessly through burial sites. Don't touch the amulets or open the jars. The curses you've heard about may be exaggerated, maybe not. But in Egypt, what matters is belief, and everyone around you believes. That belief gives words weight. It gives walls power. Don't find out the hard way. Fourth, learn the calendar. The Egyptian year has 3 seasons: Akhet, flood, Pere, planting, and Shimu, harvest. Each season has its tempo. During the flood, farmers build or are conscripted. During planting, they work like the sun depends on them. During harvest, the whole kingdom holds its breath. Failing to respect these rhythms means failing to understand the heartbeat of Egypt. Fifth, watch your mouth. Language here is formal, respectful, and steeped in status. Don't speak to someone unless you know their rank. Don't interrupt a scribe. Don't ask a priest to explain the gods. Don't comment on the pharaoh's appearance. Use titles. Keep your voice low. Silence is often safer than speech, especially in court, in temples, or anywhere near power. Sixth, understand hospitality. If someone offers you food, water, or rest, accept it graciously. Refusing can be seen as an insult. But also don't overstay. Don't take more than you need. And if you're offered beer, drink slowly. Egyptian beer is not like what you know. It's thicker, heavier, more nourishing, and sometimes stronger than you expect. Seventh, don't travel alone. The desert is unforgiving. The Nile is powerful. Bandits still exist. Even crocodiles have their territory. Stick to known routes. Travel with locals. If you're on a boat, trust the captain. If you're in a caravan, follow instructions. Egypt may be old, but it's not soft. Eighth, money is not paper. Coins are rare, especially in earlier periods. Trade is in goods. Grain, linen, oil, labour. Bring items that have real value. Something a scribe might use. Something a merchant can trade. Something a farmer can store. Jewellery is useful. Spices are gold. Tools are respected. Flashy foreign gadgets, worthless, worse suspicious. Ninth, know the signs. Animals matter. A cobra raised on a crown means the pharaoh is present. A black cat at your doorstep is protection. A hippo goddess on a charm means someone nearby is giving birth. Dreams are warnings. Symbols are language. Omens are taken seriously. Laugh at them, and you'll be alone fast. And finally, never forget where you are. You're in a world where every grain of sand has seen more than you ever will, where time moves in circles, where the past is not behind you, but above you, all around you, watching. You're in a place that doesn't just bury its kings, it defines them. That doesn't just honour ancestors, it feeds them. You don't belong here, but if you're careful, respectful, and curious, you might just be tolerated, maybe even remembered. Because if Egypt teaches anything, it's that memory is power. To be remembered is to live. To be named is to matter. You came here chasing time, but Egypt lives outside of time. It built eternity in stone and dared the desert to forget it. The desert failed. So wear the linen, speak the titles, light the incense, walk the edge between reverence and invisibility. And if you ever find yourself standing alone at sunset, staring across the river at the tomb of a king whose name is still spoken after 3,000 years, understand this. That was the plan all along. Time travel is a fantasy. But history? History is real. And no place makes that clearer than Egypt. Because even after everything, after the invasions, the forgotten languages, the collapsed temples, the gods replaced, the names misread, Egypt is still here. You can touch it, walk inside it, hear it. It never really went away. It just waited. If you stand in the temple of Karnak at dawn when the tourists haven't arrived and the air is still cool, you can feel something in the stone. Not just age, not just weight, presence. There are marks on the walls where chisel met limestone 3,000 years ago. You can trace them with your fingers, and suddenly you're not alone. You're in the same corridor where priests walked barefoot with oil lamps. You're where pharaohs whispered prayers to statues that no longer speak, but still demand silence. The gods are quiet now, but the structure they left behind is louder than ever. This guide has taken you through the visible and invisible world of ancient Egypt, from the riverbank to the afterlife. And here's the strange part. For all their focus on death, the Egyptians weren't obsessed with endings. They were obsessed with cycles, rebirth, return. The Nile floods, retreats, floods again. The sun dies each night and is reborn each morning. The dead descend into darkness, not to disappear, but to rise again as stars, as light, as memory. Everything is meant to continue, and in a way it has. Their art is still vivid, their stories still spread, their tools, their jewellery, their writings still preserved, still interpreted, still admired. Their ideas about the soul, about the body, about what it means to be remembered. Those ideas still shape how we talk about legacy, ancestry, purpose. Even the fear of being forgotten, the desire to be more than dust that's not ancient. That's it for now. That's you. We live in a world obsessed with speed, data, novelty. Ancient Egypt moved differently. It was thought in dynasties, not decades. It didn't rush, it endured. While other empires burned hot and fast, Egypt flowed like its river, slow, powerful, relentless. That's why it lasted 3,000 years. 3,000 years. Most countries don't make it to 300. And yet Egypt never stopped changing. That's the other secret. It wasn't frozen in time. It adapted. It was absorbed. It blended foreign with native, practical with sacred, myth with math. It made room for contradiction. That's how it survived. It was flexible on the outside, unshakable at the core. Pharaohs changed, borders changed. But may at the order, the balance always remained. If you've been paying attention, you'll realize that the Egyptians were not just builders and believers, they were storytellers. Everything they left behind was a message to the future. A temple is a sentence, a tomb is a letter, a scarab a prayer, and every single one says the same thing. I was here, I mattered, don't forget me, and somehow we didn't. The name of Hatshepsut was chiseled out but rediscovered. Akhenaten was erased but remembered. Commoners who left graffiti in workmen's villages still being read. They speak, across oceans of sand, across millennia, they speak. Egypt is not quiet. It just speaks in a language made of stone and shadow. So, what do you do with that? What do you do as a traveller in time, standing in the presence of a civilization that refused to die? You honour it. You don't reduce it to curses and mummies. You don't treat it like background noise for adventure movies. You meet it eye to eye. You listen. You carry it forward not as a relic, but as a teacher. A civilization that knew how to build not just cities, but meanings. Not just temples, but systems. Not just stories, but permanence. And maybe, if you learn the lessons right, you'll leave something behind too. Not a pyramid, not a tomb, but a mark, a sentence, a name worth remembering. This has been your guide for time travelers, ancient Egypt. And if you ever make it, there really make it, remember this. The gods may have gone silent, but the stones are still talking. Just make sure you're listening.